Hello, this is Janet Perez Eckles, author and speaker and missionary. I just came back from a trip to South America with a mission. Some of you have said to me, wow, Janet, you're pretty courageous being blind to travel by yourself to South America. But you know, the ones who are courageous are all of you. Those of you who chose to say yes and stand with me with your support financially and prayerfully. I want to thank you for taking that step of faith. You could have gone on with your lives and dismissed the video that I sent seeking support, but you said yes, and I want to thank you. And I want you to know that your support, whatever kind it was with me. So I'd like to very briefly give you a summary of what that trip meant, what it accomplished, and how God was active in each step during that trip. I visited 2 cities in Peru and Bolivia, actually 3 in total, and the surrounding areas in those cities. I visited groups who were made up of community leaders who are desperately trying to find ways to pass laws against child labor. It is very common to see on a daily basis 5, 6, and 7-year-old little children rummage through trash and dumps looking for metal, for glass, for carton. Many times they're injured, they're cut, they're pinched with contaminated needles, and they keep on going because they need to be able to sell those items for food. These workers are trying hard to prevent that from happening, but they meet with bureaucracy, a lot of obstacles, and feel discouraged. So my purpose there is to bring them God's hope, God's purpose, and a realignment of what they are there to do, to advocate for these children, and hope that would stop. I also visited different areas in remote parts of mountains where most people wouldn't want to live, but there are people who will build huts there. And sadly, after I spoke, women shared their lives with me. Some women were widows because their husbands were murdered in front of them and their children, refusing to join the mafia. Other women feel trapped living with husbands who are physically abusive, with alcoholism, abusive to the children. They don't know what to do. I was able to bring them the word of God that says nothing is impossible with God, that only God could open doors, and bring them the hope that they need to have. I also visited maximum security prisons where women were there for decades. Some are facing life sentences, and I heard their heart-wrenching stories. Obviously, only God knows if they're innocent or not, but my talk to them was to show them what it's like to have spiritual freedom. And I pointed out to them that many of us live outside metal bars, but are imprisoned with emptiness, with stress. We may have everything materially, but inside there's an emptiness that can put us in a prison. And I also wanted to give them the hope that God restores, God heals, and God will help them see the light of the freedom that they need to have. I visited schools to show them that even though in a third world country the future may not seem bright, but God has a plan and a future and a designed purpose for each one of them. I visited many churches. Some days I spoke to 4 different places in one day, traveled by car to remote areas where the terrain was rough to navigate through, but God was with me that I didn't fall or hurt myself, but I reached those people. And in many services, there were folks who would come up to me and they would share that they've never told anyone about this particular issue, and the heart-wrenching stories that I heard could have burned me, but I just knew that God needed those people to open their hearts, to be able to know that someone is praying for them, that someone understands. You're probably wondering, why is it that I would have to go to South America when there's so much need here in the United States? Well, it just so happens that, like in many third world countries, people who with limitations, physical limitations, the blind, paralyzed, those who can't walk or hear, are seen as social outcasts. They're relegated to one side, disregarded, and many of them end up begging on street corners. So for them to be able to see me unable to have physical sight, yet to be able to live in freedom and joy and in peace, I believe was a message that they needed to hear, that the God of the universe doesn't just act here in the United States, but is also vibrant, active, and loving whatever part of the world they're in. That was the message I brought to them. And I think I was well received because culturally it's tough to accept someone with a physical handicap, to give them encouragement. One example was a young man after one of the church services. He came up to me and he grabbed me, and the first thing he did, he just gave me a very tight hug. He put his head on my shoulder and he just sobbed and sobbed uncontrollably. Finally, when he caught his breath, he said, "I'm losing my sight and you just gave me hope." Inside of me, I thought maybe God sent me for that young man only. I'm not sure. But I have to believe that so many are living there now, looking in their future, wondering, what's there for me? Is God really there? Will I be able to make anything of my life? And my prayer is that through the message I brought to them, is that no matter what happens with us, to us, in the place that we live, in the country we're in, God is never far. God is still active, powerful, with His grace pouring upon us. In many services, I had the privilege of inviting many to make a decision for Christ. And after all, it is a decision. In this life that we live, we have a purpose and we have that decision. The decision to choose to stay home in our comfort zone, or the decision to serve God and go out there to spread His word and the gospel. A decision to not to take a risk and to sit back, or a decision to say yes to the Lord when He's calling us to do something. Again, I want to thank you for your decision to say yes to me, to stand with me, to support me in prayer, to support me financially, and to stand with me in bringing something of hope, of love, and freedom to those who are living in spiritual darkness.